Okay, should be good.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Bob. Hey, everybody, welcome to our Sandbox review today. It's Tuesday, May 13th. We'll kick this off with the antitrust policy before we jump into going through the actual Sandbox projects. I'll just read it real quick. The LF antitrust policy states that the CNCF meetings involve participation by industry competitors, and it's the intention of the Linux Foundation to conduct all of its activities in accordance with applicable antitrust and competition laws. It is therefore extremely important that attendees adhere to meeting agendas and be aware of and not participate in any activities that are prohibited under applicable U.S., state, federal, or foreign antitrust and competition laws. All right. And we can see some examples at the antitrust policy URL there. All right, I'm going to jump back to the agenda now. And two things we're going to go through today. Sandbox review is the primary one. There are 8 of these. I've got the list right here. I'm going to try to time box each one of these things, probably to around 6 or 7 minutes, just so that we can try to get through all of them. I think I also have notes from Ricardo, since he's not going to be here, and we can talk about his notes on each one of those. And I think Emily also dropped some notes a little while back. Bob, could you find those as well so we can
Yep,
sh
let
share
me.
share those? And then we can start off with URNC or URNC, sorry. And then this was one from Ricardo and Alex. Alex, do you have anything you wanted to cover with this one first? And then we can turn it over to the rest of the group. I'm going to start a timer just to time box us on each one of these things too. So go ahead and
Well,
start.
yeah, so I went through it and also watched the presentation that they've done for Tag Runtime back in February. I think it has a lot of promise because it has the ability to run unikernels for a number of different a number of different runtimes, and they're adding support for different cloud providers as well. It is early, but they've got a very well-defined roadmap and a fair amount of contributors, although they are all from one company today.
Mhm.
But still, my recommendation would be to take it to a vote, because I think we have we've had things like Kata containers and other sort of VM-based runtimes in the past, but this is actually giving you the ability to support multiple of those different types of runtimes. And therefore, I think this could become like more of a framework product for the runtimes running in VMs and giving you that secure multi-tenancy kind of capability for things like functions and other things like that.
Ricardo's comment, I think, was mostly centered around the contributions coming from the single company as well. And it looks like they responded with a pretty lengthy response. And their hope is that by making it into the sandbox, it'll be clear that it's a true open source project and not just a specific tool, and give the broader community confidence to engage, try it out, and contribute. And Ricardo also said he was okay to vote on this. Do we think this is one that we want to?
Lynn
Oh,
has her hand up.
oh, sorry.
No
Go ahead, Lynn.
worry, I understand when you host, you can see the hand. So I just have a quick comment. I noticed the project has been out for almost 2 years and the momentum is pretty low. Like the number of forks and star are super low. So we only got 80 star and 7 forks. So I'm a little bit worried about the traction the project has gained. That's my only concern. It does sounds like it belongs to cloud native. I think there's no doubt about it. I'm a little bit worried about the contribution factor and the traction it has gained. Because in the past, I don't think we never set a number of stars, but we tend to agree it needs to have some number like 100 or 300. I don't remember exactly if we set any number and a number of forks.
I think the counter argument to that, and I think there is actually a comment in the issue further up the page, is the working on kernels and runtimes is a little niche. and it's not a it's not a mainstream thing, but obviously a very important thing. And I think that this is never going to be one of those projects that's going to have lots and lots of forks, for example. It's unlikely.
One other just general comment, even though like it is predominantly single vendor is at least okay for Sandbox. And taking like through incubation, we just want to see to make sure that they are actually growing, getting more contributors, and on a positive path for incubating and absolutely by graduated.
Does it seem like it has a path to graduation, given the kind of niche nature of it?
I think so. My sort of my comment there would be, because this is being developed as a framework and supports different unikernels, it's much more likely to gain traction as a framework, and I think that is sort of the big differentiator compared to the other sort of unikernel type runtimes that we've seen in the past.
So it's very similar to Unicraft. So Unicraft is another framework, but I think it's good to have more than one. I mean, we're not actually king making. So I don't. They actually presented in tag runtime, but I can't remember how different they are from Unicraft. But the only thing I remember that they did have a distinction uh, compared to Unicraft, right? So.
Right, any other comments or questions that we want to bring up?
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said, including what Lynn was talking about. What gives me hope is, one of the responses says we design and aim to hope URunC agnostic to specific guest or cloud provider monitor stacks. So I think that is, I guess, the key here for eventual success of the project or not. So if they're thinking about it that way, I think it gives me hope that they'll be able to find a way to graduation.
All right, we've got like 1 minute left on this one. Any other final discussion points?
This one, I think that the time box needs to be shortened if we're going to get through all 8
Okay.
and still have time for the discussions that we need to have later.
Okay, sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
So just one quick comment from actually from Emily is, if we are moving this to a vote, should also drop a comment that they, as a FYI, they do need to add a security policy.
Oh yeah, that's a new requirement that we just updated. So yeah, which is pretty simple to do. It's
Who would like to, or Jeremy, would you like to ask somebody to comment on the issue and we can move to vote?
I can comment on that because I'm very familiar with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. The next one on the list is Redis operator. So I took a look at this one, and Lynn, I think you also reviewed this one. I think I have hesitation just in general with this, based off of the Redis versus Valkey kind of confusion. We have operators already, but this is an operator for a project that has had kind of a dubious open source track record. It's now been updated to, and they commented on this because I was kind of poking at that. The new versions are going to be under AGPL. The Redis operator itself will be Apache 2. So it's definitely, for me, it's in the cloud native space. I think it's strange though that it's Redis. And I think Lynn asked a really good question. If they had considered submitting this to the Redis project itself, and if they did that, that would definitely fall out of this category, I think. And they said that they may do that in the future. I think submitting it to the sandbox and going through that process would definitely maybe hinder that. probably hinder that, complicate things. And it looks like in the chat, Chris said we may have an issue hosting a project
Yeah.
named Redis operator.
Yeah, we'd have to double check, but I'd be surprised if Redis would allow something to be called Redis that's not owned by
Yeah.
Redis Inc.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really want them to be hosted on the Redis repo because that's where people are going to look for an operator. And it's very common for project to host operator and be the best operator or multiple operator for the project. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I asked a question too about supporting Valky, because Alex says it doesn't support current Redis versions or Valky, and it sounded like this would always remain the Redis operator, and they would move to a separate project for Valky, which confuses me about the relevance of this as well. I think that them approaching Redis first might make sense here. It looks like Karina also suggested that in the chat. So this one, I think I would not move forward to a vote if I was, I mean, I would probably vote no on this, but I think I would potentially not move this forward and have them discuss with Redis first and maybe come back and answer a little bit about their plans with Valky a little bit more. Anybody want to chime in?
I
James, go
would
ahead.
push back even harder and say no, in the sense that even if we get to a vote, I would vote no as well, Jeremy, because we've always talked about these kinds of projects not getting enough traction to go to incubation and graduation anyway. So, and so, you know, if we want to push to a vote, I would vote no, but I would rather, yeah, that would be my inclination. I don't want to get a clarification. They've made it clear that they are Redis specific.
Other quick thing, at least in past discussions around operators, is like does it offer significant additional functionality than just kind of spinning up and managing the application? Because like, you know, Rook spins up and manages a whole bunch of different things. It does so well. Cloud Native PG adds a whole bunch of additional functionality over just, you know, managing like Postgres. And so like that is something I'd want to know more about.
I had a quick look, and it doesn't look like they offer much more than a standard install at this point. So they don't offer like the advanced topologies with things like Cloud Native PG or other operators do. So I would suggest pushing back for now.
Jeremy?
So would
Oh, go ahead, Karina.
It sounds like that there's a consensus if you want to move to the action.
So I think the action here, we should comment on this one and push back. Do we want to ask for clarification, or do we just want to suggest that they go to the Redis project instead?
I would recommend that they discuss with the Redis project, and then if they're still interested, link to a public conversation about the discussion. Does anybody else have a recommendation? And then move to wait. Who would like to, or Jeremy?
Yeah, I can comment on this after we're done. I'm taking notes as we go too.
Would
All right.
anybody like to help with notes? Jeremy's amazing at notes, but we really need everybody to contribute as well.
Hey, Jeremy, I'll pick up this one because I already reviewed. So
Okay, perfect. All right, and oops, forgot to go through the health issues. I had that open. Just as a quick reminder, there are 4 health issues open right now, and if folks could take a look at those and vote on them, that would be great. Sorry I didn't do that at the beginning. Okay, next up is X registry, DIMS and Facila.
Yeah, I think Facila is out. So yeah, I took a look at the X registry. It comes from their previous work in the working group that they had for cloud events and things like that. Here, they did say that they want to build a server for the registry. and the server itself is not based on OCI or any of the other things that we already have. It's brand new from scratch. The spec repository has a bunch of people, but the server repository itself, though that is the main URL in question and scope of the application, it doesn't really have that many set of people. It seems very useful building on their existing work that they've already done. Yeah, the only thing that is worrying me is like the number of people working on this thing. Other than that, I would give them a chance and see where they go. That would be my recommendation. So I would basically take it to a vote.
Okay. I'll read Ricardo's comments. He said, it seems heavily linked to the serverless working group. The activity in the GitHub repo for the server component seems pretty limited right now. And his indication was it was not clear for a vote. Anyone else have points they want to raise, discussion items?
I had just a very quick question. I don't know if anybody came across this because I couldn't find it myself. Is any project or service consuming the spec today, or is this still at the concept stage?
The cloud event spec that being used by many people, and this is how do you use the cloud event spec? Where do you find it, and like how do you interop? So you end up needing a registry. So that's why I was saying this is building up on the work that they already done. So the spec here itself becomes more important. And like you rightly asked, like how many people are using the spec? So they are building the spec and they want to build the implementation, a sample implementation as well together with it. Similar to like how the Docker registry came about, right? So the spec and the implementation co-evolved right at the beginning. So this is somewhat similar to that, but I don't know how many people use cloud events per se. And yeah, that would be a fair question to ask.
Chris dropped a link to cloudevents.io and said there's a lot of cloud events adopters. And then I think Bob said, does it make sense to be part of the cloud events instead of a separate thing?
I have no hesitation in if they want to go that route, for sure.
Yeah, could make sense over the long term, but sometimes people want their own little sandbox to experiment. So I get it.
Right. It might be in the sandbox and then end up in cloud events, right?
Yeah. They're still in the bootstrap phase. And like Doug's done this work with cloud events, which initially I was a little bit dismissive of because the spec is pretty simple, but it is a problem that many systems have, and they've done a good job building a community over time.
Yeah, the people who are working on this have done it before, both in the industry as well as in CNCF. That gives me a little bit more hope than usual.
Do we want to move this forward for a vote then? Okay. Can somebody comment on the issue and do that, and we'll move on to the next one? Okay, next one is Model Pack. Katarina or Chad? Is Chad on?
So I'm here. So Model Pack, I have been looking at it, and I'm gonna somewhat echo what Ricardo Rocha was saying, is that I'm wondering why this isn't being driven through the OCI. So do we need this spec to live in the CNCF? How much work has been done with the OCI at this point? I do like that there's a lot of different groups that are working on this. However, I'd like clarification on what work has been done with the OCI. And if this is kind of, I
So-
didn't where, go ahead.
So I have some insight as someone who spends time in OCI land is what they're doing essentially potentially could make big changes to the image spec and kind of the distribution specs. And OCI operates a little bit more like a traditional, I would say, standards body where things are very, very slow, right? They really don't want to break the world. And this is an attempt to potentially not necessarily do that. Like there's ways potentially to evolve the specs without truly breaking things. So there has been work in OCI on this particular problem, but it's just so slow. So, you know, the CNCF can be viewed as a way to allow for this type of experimentation outside of necessarily OCI's governance structures, which makes it very difficult to do this type.
I watched the
type of thing.
I watched the artifacts stuff unfold inside of OCI, and it was
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
because the ORAS project, which is in CNCF, was
Yep.
driving a lot of that stuff outside of getting the changes into actually the distribution
Yeah.
spec. So I think that might be a case where something like that could happen here and potentially
Yep.
drive back into OCI.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to see.
OCI is going to evolve eventually to support these scenarios for sure, and I think this is one way to drive that evolution. It's just I think OCI is not the right place to host these types of experiments. Is really.
Yeah. And the other thing also, OCI is like once you tested things out in the field, then you put it in the spec. So
Correct.
yeah.
Usually it's stuff that's already
Right.
running in production. It's kind of like the distribution spec is, you know, Docker registry, HTTP,
Right.
you know, registry stuff. So that's the other thing. Yeah, OCI is a little bit unique in that it's not a place really for experimentation.
So, Dims. Okay, I was going to ask a question. Does this need to be a sandbox project? Is this something that if it's going to go back into the OCI, is this actually going to graduate within the CNCF? And then also, would this be better off as an initiative within the AI initiatives group driven by the TOC? And then if it evolves into more, they could apply to be a sandbox project if there is a path towards graduation, or push back to, because we're trying to build more collaboration with the other communities and foundations and all the other working groups. Is this something that can be experimented within the initiative and then pushed back to OCI?
But they already have an artifact, right? So I think yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like long term, I don't know where this thing how it will evolve, but I know they're already working with other CNCF projects, like Harbor's already adopted, you know, and supported this spec. So they're kind of already doing that cross project collaboration, which, you know, if you're a spec or you have a spec artifact or code artifact, I think that's something that lives in like a sandbox project necessarily versus an initiative. And especially you have something that's already been adopted by another CNCF project, shows that they're actually building something that may actually be useful.
I guess my concern is that we still haven't defined the requirements for a spec project. And what I'm hearing is that there still isn't actually a path towards graduation. So sandbox is for experimentation for projects that have a path towards graduation. And
Yeah, I mean, I think graduation could be merging into OCI, or graduation could be a separate spec of how models are managed in kind of production. Like I don't know what graduation will look like long term for this.
If there is
Go
a
ahead, Dims.
companion project to for an implementation, then there would be, right? Like, and they haven't talked about one here.
I think KitOps is the companion project, right, that we accepted that uses this also, which is another CNCF project. So so it's used by 2 CNCF projects right now.
Well, if you look at the person at the top is the one who contributed KitOps. So that's sorry, go ahead, Bob, and Lynn also has her hand raised.
So as far as like specs and things like that, we do have things like in toto, and we are like the sort of figuring out what the spec project type thing looks like is still like an ongoing discussion. Like I think there's a email in my inbox regarding toughen and O2, yeah, the JDF standards and toughen like NTO spec stuff. So like that is something that I think is going to get sorted out, just not necessarily right now. So I wouldn't necessarily consider it a blocker for them to like enter the CNCF, since the timeline to sort out the spec thing might be a little bit.
Yeah, Bob, you said exactly what I was going to say because I took Intuitu to graduation, so I can see this project to become another Intuitu or Taft in CNCF. And this is a really hot area. I think there's tremendous interest in this area, so I'm not surprised to see it grow fast.
Okay, we're going to time box this one. Do we want to take an action to vote or hold off and discuss specs more?
I would say since we have other projects in the same space with the same kind of outcomes, we should separate the two, take this to a vote, and then deal with all the spec projects together if we want to.
Okay. Anybody opposed to moving it to a vote? All right, so let's take an action to move this one to a vote. Can someone volunteer to do that one? And we'll move on to the next. Next up is K Agent. Kevin, are you here? Or Katie? I think
Yes.
Kevin's here.
Yes. Yeah, so I took a look at the K-Agent. I think it's a very interesting project because it helps users to, build their own AI agent with and that is able to interact with multiple cloud native projects through the corresponding tools. And it's currently built on top of the AutoGen framework, but they also have their plan to implement their own. And also for community perspective, they have initial community momentum. I think that's a good traction. And also some of the people outside Solo are started contributing. And also I can see some of documents written up for the community building stuff. So I think it's also a good aspect. So one of the quick question, maybe not blocking, but good to raise is the code of conduct. Currently, they are adopting a general one. Maybe switch to CNCF if the voting passes. Yeah, that's my input.
Okay, anybody, trying to see if anybody has hands raised. Any other comments or questions that we want to ask about this?
I agree. It looks like a good project that would fit within the CNCF.
Yeah, thanks for the poking and the prodding and the quick responses to the poking and the prodding, Len and team. So thank you.
Well, thank
Ricardo's
you. I should be quiet. So
Yeah, I'm just saying thank you.
thank you. I appreciate all the feedback. And we will resolve the code of conduct, Kevin. Thank you.
Ricardo's comment was, this looks interesting, and he was okay to vote on this. Doesn't sound like there's any objection here. Do we want to move this to a vote and then ask them to adopt the CNCF code of conduct? Okay, cool. Does anybody want to volunteer to start that off? If not, I can do it after this.
Oh, I can do
Yeah,
that.
I can do it.
Thanks,
Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I can do that. Yes.
All right. Next up, we've got Infra DDS. Okay. Ricardo and I both looked at this one. I'll read his comments first. He guided the submission, but this is very early, and without the manager component, it's incomplete. Not much end users can do with it today. I would suggest to include this project once there's an option to deploy the full stack. And I think that was my feedback as well, especially when asked about the manager component, and it wasn't included in this. I think that's definitely, for me, a hard one to agree on including. It just feels like it's incomplete and kind of early. So I would move to not vote on this and push back, reach back to them and tell them to evolve this submission a little bit to include the manager component to make it a more compelling inclusion. Has anybody else taken a look at this? Have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions and they responded to my questions. So we should tell them to come back in 6 months, have a base set of scenarios ready and working before they come to us. So we can evaluate it on that basis at that time.
Yeah, I was going to say I have read through it. The spec and the vision of what it promises is very interesting, but it's sort of super early and there's nothing to actually see right now.
Okay, so I'll summarize that. We want to not move this to a vote right now. We'll ask them to come back in 6 months with some concrete scenarios, perhaps the manager component. Anyone have any conflicting thoughts or want to see anything else? Okay, I'll comment on this one since I helped review it. And then next up, we have CubeBuddy. And Emily's not here. Alex, do you want to lead us through this one real quick?
Yeah. So this is a very, very early project. I think there was like a burst of activity starting around February of this year, so it's literally like 2 or 3 months old as far as I can tell. And is it's basically just a dashboard, and I use just sort of conservatively because obviously dashboards can be really useful, but at the moment it is a relatively simple dashboard with AI tie-ins, but it doesn't have sort of the diagnostic or like decision making capabilities at this point. It is mostly just visualization, and the governance and the project seems to be evolving at a very, very fast pace. They evolved from version 1 to version 2 in 3 weeks, which is a bit strange. So I would suggest that we pause this and tell them to come back once they have additional functionality and the ability to have decision making and things like that in the system too. Otherwise, it is just a dashboard template.
Ricardo's comments were, looking into the project, I saw only the visualization parts, but I might have missed something. I would suggest the project to evolve in the operational intelligence space before resubmitting. So I think he aligns with your comments. Anyone else have thoughts on this one? Sounds like don't want to move this one forward for a vote.
There is actually also one other thing. There is another project called CubeDeck.
The next one on the list.
Yeah, which and there seems to be some naming conflict because CubeDeck already includes something from CubeBuddy, but they're different things. So that also needs to be resolved.
Okay, do you want to follow up on this one, Alex, since you helped review it?
Yep, can do.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone else have thoughts or comments? All right, let's move on to the last one and then we can wrap up the sandbox review. Cube deck. Karina and Dims, do you want to lead us through this one?
So they sound like a great set of tools, but we don't have the toolbox yet, and we're not in a position to create the toolbox at this time. Hopefully that will be for second half of the year. So recommend they come back in a year or when the toolbox is up and running, I should say. Dennis, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. The other thing that is a little bit that they'll need to do is there are a lot of AKS specific stuff. We need it to be more generalized to any Kubernetes instance, or support multiple cloud providers. So we'll need to give them that feedback as well. I don't know, like, can I ask a general question? Like, how many of you use PowerShell scripts? So will they have a problem getting more people to help out with their projects? Jeremy?
I mean, I use PowerShell sometimes, but that's because I work for a place that builds PowerShell. PowerShell actually will run on Linux as well, so it can do both.
I
but
did make sure that
yeah.
Mac OS and Linux, they
Yeah.
had a way to install it and run it. It's just how many people will end up contributing is the question, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely going to be targeted towards people that probably are coming from a Windows background.
that tells us why it is AKS specific to some extent.
Yeah, I think this one to me feels like it would be a sandbox, or sorry, a toolbox sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not something that would ever really graduate into a general project.
Yeah. So we basically tell them, hey, we're going to try to do a toolbox thing end of the year, so come back next year, kind of thing, right?
Yep, that sounds good to me. Karina or Dims, do you want to take the action to reply to them? And
Karina, you might have to take this one because you have to say about toolbox.
I'll take this one and wordsmith it.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right, that is the last of the sandbox items. Thanks everybody for reviewing those and for mostly sticking into the time boxes. That was pretty good. So I think next we want to stop the recording and move on to discussing